the Highlands in the winter time. Towering spires of shimmering white, mountains of snow and ice that tempt the brave and the bold and send shivers through their vitals. Magical Scotland, wild, cold, raw. A true testing ground for winter climbers and skiers. The lure of these hills and glens is enough to entice 3 American companions away from their vast alpine playgrounds. Here they will teeter their way up icy walls and ski the steepest gullies the Highlands have to offer. Well, you win some and you lose some, I suppose. It's a risk you take when you've travelled halfway around the world to face this fickle climate and all its quirks. At least they have seemingly embraced the first rule of Scottish winter climbing. Always be optimistic. Aye, that's the joys of the Highlands, ladies and gents. But who better than Spud, local hero and the best piper Scotland has ever known, to lift their spirits in the shelter of the famous Clachaig Inn. Hey Spud, how's it going, pal? We've truly got a bonny cast lined up to lead you through this tale. Along the way, the Americans plan on meeting some local folk to show them around, but let's get to know them first, eh? This lassie is Angela van Viermisch, a climber from the mountains and deserts of Utah. This canny lad is John Frederick, an all-round mountain enthusiast from Colorado. And this is Fabrizio Zangrilli, big mountain legend and Greater Ranges guide from the heart of the Rocky Mountains.
The weather is interesting. It's shockingly warm.
I definitely had some high aspirations for the north face of the bend, but if it's out, it's out. You can't force it, you know? You can't go climb rock that's not frozen.
It's really bad timing. I've never seen a winter so bad. There is genuinely probably more ice in my freezer than there is on the hill at the moment.
Ach, honest words from a wise man, and a true Scot if ever there was one. Here he is, Kev Shields, an ice climbing connoisseur of the highest calibre.
Freezing levels above the summits, and I mean for getting into February, pretty unheard of really. But they get to experience the frustration of climbing in Scotland, so it's true to the character of climbing here.
At the edge of Ranach Moor, where the land whips up to meet the sky, this is the Buchel, the gateway to the Highlands.
Get them onto some of the routes up there, but it'll not be winter climbing by any stretch of the imagination really, but we'll get them out onto some of the kind of big more classic mountaineering lines, and you know, you go through your plan A, B, C, D, you know, halfway through the alphabet till you get something.
In the Glencoe, Fort William, Ben Nevis area, I feel like it's the land where the dinosaurs used to roam. It's just these big open plains with like boggy marshlands.
Love's got an enemy.
I mean, Glencoe, I guess it has this atmosphere that nowhere else has.
I can't get enough of it.
I'd been on the buckle 3 times before and never done the curved ridge.
It was very nice. It was not what we were supposed to be doing in winter, but it was really pleasant.
I mean, for this time of year, you shouldn't be rock climbing.
Just you and a bunch of mates and scrambling up a ridge. We're all just simul-soloing.
And when I feel
Kev is one of my favorite humans on the face of the earth right now. He's a complete badass.
Kev doesn't have one of his full hands, but it doesn't define him, and I just love that, and I love his tenacity.
It was cool hearing a story about Curve Ridge. Curve Ridge had some deep history to him. He had a friend who encouraged him to do it, and his friend put his hand in his pocket and did the whole thing in front of him with one hand, and it really just boosted Kevin's confidence, and that just kicked it off. He did it, and he loved it, and now he's doing stuff more badass than I could do in an able-bodied situation.
I mean, it wasn't a serious objective for anybody on the team, but it was something to keep the spirits high and keep the ball rolling, waiting for conditions to come in. Scrambling up Curve Ridge was definitely, I think, needed for everybody's morale to remind us that like the mountains here are amazing and that we just needed to get out and have a day.
It was sort of, I feel like it kicked the trip off because it started snowing that night.
What did I say about fickle weather? With conditions finally in, the brooding north face of Ben Nevis beckons. The famed honeypot that's stacked with world-class routes and classics for your tick list. It's nae roadside cragging, that's for sure.
Yeah, we went full winter just to change the scenery though. It was amazing. I mean, that's just Scotland.
Yeah, it was like a completely different universe. Total 180 change in conditions. It was impressive.
This is the Scotland I remember. This is Scotland I like.
Well, best get at it then. And who better to share a bit of knowledge of these lofty heights than mixed climbing warrior Greg Boswell. This grizzly man trains day and night to keep himself in shape for putting up some of the hardest new mixed routes in the world.
Well, I mean, anybody that knows anything about mixed climbing right now knows who Greg is.
He's like a little bit of a hero, really.
Pretty cool to be out with them. They're a good laugh. They're really, really psyched for the sport. Really, really psyched to do more in the mountains of Scotland, which is really cool.
Yeah, climbing on the Ben is a little different to being at home. Part of it is the mystique, the aura, is just adds a little bit to what you're doing.
I am a fair weather climber, is what I realized coming to Scotland. That I think that I'm hardcore sometimes, but at the end of the day, I mostly climb in fair weather because when we were getting just spin drift on and it was raining and the wind was howling and Greg was like, oh yeah, this is super casual. I was like, this reminds me of like climbing in storms in Alaska.
I think you have two options here. You either come prepared to suffer and do battle, or you bring someone who will put the rope up for you.
The beauty of climbing with Greg was the fact that he's a really, really enjoyable guy to be with. And he's also one of those people who can climb harder stuff than most people on the face of the earth, but he doesn't look down or belittle people who don't. And so he was super encouraging, and that was one of the highlights, if not the highlight of the trip, for sure.
This guy's a beast right here.
Well, I came here thinking I was just going to crush everything in sight, but instead I got on the second pitch of the route. It just had this layer of burglass. I like peeked over and I saw endless rolling ice slab and I just was like, I'm crawling back to the safe belay and wrapping off. Maybe I'm a wuss. Maybe I haven't climbed much in Scottish conditions.
I think they got a bit spooked by the style, like the icy cracks. It's just like another thing you've got to battle in Scotland, like you've got to try and fight to get the gear.
As Fabrizio followed me up, He'd go to make the move, and then just get pummeled with spin drift. And we were just laughing so hard, I like collapsed in the belay. I couldn't even handle it. It was magical. We were just having a time. We're like, okay, this is ridiculous, but it is so much fun. Like, this is why we climb. It was super good getting out with Fabrizio. He's like the best.
It was a good reminder of why everyone raves about being on the bend in winter. You know, this is proper climbing. Honestly, it's like the epitome of how things should be done, and I like it.
Back in the comfort of the Clachaig, and there's nothing like a bit of squiddly diddly music to dance to after a long day on the mountains. Right, that's enough of that. Away with you to your beds. There's an alpine start in the morning. And guess who will be waking yous up? A fair few locals here say west is best, yet the dark corries of the CAIRNGORMS in the east harbour their own unique character. Tenuous climbing, short routes that pack a punch, and a top out onto a breathtaking plateau akin to Arctic tundra.
Oh, the CAIRNGORMS. Terrifying.
Less sort of put your pick in a crack and pull up, a little bit more delicate climbing.
So typically that makes it a little more nerve-wracking.
The fact that we pretty much try and eliminate fixed gear, bolts, or try and not leave gear in routes when we climb them, it's much, much more scary on that unknown aspect.
Here I am on a tiny little ledge with Greg wondering, why have you brought a rack big enough to free 3 El-Cap routes in a day without changing or picking up the gear? And the answer is, I have to climb 9 meters to the first belay, and I'm in Scotland and it's petrifying.
It's cool, but also a little heady to how airy this is.
One thing that is hard to get used to out here is you feel yes, overconfident when you walk up to route and the route's only 60 meters long, but then you spend 2 hours trying to climb the first 15 meters, which is what happened our day in the CAIRNGORMS, where Fabrizio and I got on a route.
John led a very nice lead that, you know, I followed and thought, oh, this would have been pretty spicy.
Shit!
I get to the top of the first pitch, which is literally like 15 meters off the ground. And then Fabrizio comes up to me. We're getting late in the day. I was not feeling super confident about the speed in which we could climb the route. So Greg offered to come and climb the route, and he fired it up super fast, but we got stopped in the dark. I feel like that was more of a learning experience than anything else that's happened on this trip.
Here we are, Savage Slit. Greg recommended this route. The last time he climbed it, he was 16.
I think Angela's ascent, that was sort of the breakthrough moment for our team. That was when we sort of, under Greg's sort of guidance, figured out Scottish climbing after a couple days.
It's always just fun to see someone get out of their own head, because that's the reality here is Angela, Fabrizio, they're strong, climbers. This is what they do. But sometimes it's just you have these mental blocks, and I think that day was a huge day for her and just sort of getting over one of those.
It's a good, casual, nice route. Yeah, I had a blast. It was great.
If you thought waiting for climbing conditions to come in Scotland is frustrating, how's about the skiing? More waiting around for a window of opportunity is on the cards. But what to do? Well, you certainly don't turn down an invite for a cup of tea from Myrtle Simpson, an extraordinary woman who's just been awarded the Polar Medal by Her Royal Highness the Queen.
We're gonna go meet a legend. I mean, you can tell by her presence that she knows what she's doing and that she's somebody.
She's the godmother of skiing in Scotland.
You're like, yeah, this lady is definitely significant. You just know.
And Fabrizio.
Fabrizio, all of that.
Yes.
Not just Fab.
Well, sure, Fab will work.
I was a weekend climber, and you soon find that you really need to be a skier to get into where you want to go in the wintertime in Scotland. So that's really how I got into it, and before you know where you are, you're part of the scene. And our whole social life really is among skiers or people involved with skiing.
But she definitely doesn't take it too seriously. I don't know, she doesn't consider herself an athlete. She said athletes are those people who run in circles around those tracks. You know, we're just skiers. And I got a kick out of that, because you're like, lady, you skied across Greenland, like you're an athlete.
Well, I've always said from the beginning that women can be polar explorers. And Nansen skied across Greenland in 1888, and we thought we'd try to ski across Greenland in his footsteps. So we set off, and that's what we did.
I mean, it's more like what has she not done than what has she done. You know, trekking across Greenland, going to Antarctica, living in the Amazon, you know, in Peru for 6 months.
What was amazing for me is sitting around her kitchen table and then talking about climbing in Peru. And she would say, well, in 1955, we did this in Peru. And I'd say, oh, I did that 10 years ago. And then, you know, to compare and contrast these memories of all these great adventures that they had accumulated over 40 or 50 years, and how they're all, that community is still old friends and still hang out, still joke, still laugh.
And there's a nice picture over there. We did the right-hand ridge.
And then we went to try to go skiing with her, and the weather was just abysmal. And I have to be honest, that was the most amazing moment in my life, because I realized, here's this 83-year-old woman who needs sticks to walk in the rain, or in the wind rather. And I'm wearing 350-pound down coats zipped up, and I'm wondering if I'm gonna live in the 100-meter walk from the car park to the cafe. And she's walking around with her jacket unzipped, and I thought, wow, this is what a hard woman really is.
The weather can change as quick as anything. But get a good day, and then suddenly you wonder what you've been complaining about, because there's nothing like it.
Well, you know you've got that soul, my brother. Why you trying to hide? In the heart is a beast that'll keep you bleeding. Learn to let it lie. In the walls of the mausoleum, and we're all just trying to reach the other side.
Well, we're here, CAIRNGORMS Mountain, go skiing, and to be honest with you, it looks like a phenomenal amount of choices. We've got, however you say that, closed. West wall, closed. That, 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 closed. This one ambiguous, and that one open. So I think we know the way down. Psych.
Well, you know you've got that soul, my brother. Why you trying to hide? In the heart is a beast that'll keep you bleeding. Learn to let it lie. In the walls of the mausoleum. In the walls of the mausoleum. And we're all just trying to reach the other side.
For those kindred spirits who find sanctuary in the mountains, it's always hard to leave the hills behind. There's nothing quite like sharing your adventures with your pals.
I mean, I love America, but I feel like I'm just scratched the surface and I don't want to go home. I really don't want to go home.
As the fellas leave for the wilds of the Northwest Highlands, the next chapter for Angela is back in America. But it seems Spud's nae going anywhere.
So we had the great pleasure of going on this bothy adventure, this Chenaval bothy.
We hiked into the bothy, and it was unbelievably stunning. It was a new Scotland, like a Scotland I just hadn't seen before.
When you're descending into the valley, it is the most idyllic place on the planet. I mean, it was just perfect.
The mountains were just drastically different. Chenaval showed up, and it was just too good to be true. It was just picturesque.
What an amazing setting to spend an afternoon.
This place is amazing.
Who was killed on this mountain?
The idea of bothying may seem strange to some folk, so the Americans met up with bothy expert and landscape photographer Nicholas White to tell them a bit more.
Bothies have risen in popularity over the last 50 years, and they're kind of almost synonymous now with the outdoor experience. They're kind of remote mountain shelters, and it's made a lot more comfortable with a working fire and a bottle of whiskey. One of the things that gives each individual bothy the character is the items that people have left behind, or people have nailed, routes of walks they've done. It kind of tells you a story about the people that have been here before. We had a few people hike in off Anchellac in the evening, and we just shared stories about what we've been up to.
It was actually quite nice to have another group there. I think that's the sharing part that's the most fun. You don't know these people, but you sit around a fire, have a chat, see who they are. And I think honestly, we have the same thing in Colorado, where we share winter mountain cabins while we're ski touring. And it's the same thing you do in Nepal when you're trekking around. You're in a hut in the evening, sitting by the fire, just talking with people. It's just what brings us all together.
It's kind of a cliche thing to say, but people say that you enter as strangers and leave as friends, but that's very much the case. When that fire's on and they're standing outside, there's a canopy of stars above them. I think there's a kind of a privilege to be able to introduce someone to that kind of lifestyle.
A bothy like Chenaval should be there forever. It's amazing.
I don't know, it's not climbing, it's not skiing, but it is probably more fun than either. I mean, just sitting around having a laugh with mates in the mountains. It's, I think, what we're all trying to do in the end.
Aye, all good things come to an end, I suppose, but memories of this kind are etched into your soul and fill your heart to bursting.
What I would say about this trip is I feel like it was the perfect representation of Scotland in a week.
I met the kindest people in the entire world, and everybody was just so generous and had like a really great rugged spirit about them.
You know, mountain culture is, I think, repeated globally. Whether we're doing this in Nepal, Alaska, El Chalten, or in Chamonix. And that's what makes the community somewhat unique.
Go on then, Spud, one last time, if you have to.